If you're a fan of vacationing at the Disney parks, you may have heard of Disney Vacation Club by now. DVC has kiosks in the parks, and people talk about it a lot as a great way to save money when you go to Disney World. If you're curious about Disney Vacation Club but not too sure where to start, this is the video for you. DVC has a lot of detail, and if you are genuinely going to pursue buying into DVC, I suggest you do a deep dive. But if you're just at step 1 of figuring out what the heck it is, and if you're even interested, don't waste your time with all those details. Instead, watch this general overview so you can understand the basics of Disney Vacation Club in under 15 minutes. If you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Jacqueline, you're at Pixie Dust PhD. We have a ton of Disney Vacation Club information on this channel. I will leave a lot of links to resources in the description below. If you have a specific question about DVC, please leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to get back to you with a useful answer. Thanks to everyone who's liked the video, subscribed to the channel, commented down below, and shared with friends. If you're not a DVC novice and instead you're more of a DVC expert, you're already an owner, please do share this video with your friends who probably ask you, hey, how is it that you go to Disney all the time? Before we get started, I do want to highlight a couple of caveats. This is a very high level of overview. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of detail that goes into Disney Vacation Club. We're not going to touch on those details in this video. Also, a lot of the concepts and terminology are intertwined. So it's a bit of circular logic sometimes. You may have to go back and rewatch portions for things to fully make sense. And out of respect for your time, in an attempt to not waste your time, we are going to move pretty fast. Check the timestamps in the description below if you want to skip around, and you can adjust the playback speed in your YouTube player settings to be slower if that would be helpful for you. First and foremost, what is Disney Vacation Club, or DVC? This is Disney's timeshare program. If you've stayed at a Disney-owned and operated resort at the parks before, they are split into 3 levels really: value, moderate, and deluxe. Disney Vacation Club rooms are actually in a 4th category called villas, but these are at deluxe level resorts. You'll find Disney Vacation Club locations primarily around the Walt Disney World Resort area, but there are a couple at Disneyland Resort in California, 1 at Vero Beach, 1 at Hilton Head, and 1 in Hawaii. DVC rooms are called villas, and they typically come in 4 sizes. You have a studio, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom grand villa. Some DVC resorts have specialty types of rooms. For example, there are overwater bungalows at the Polynesian Resort at Disney World. And not all resorts have all 4 of these standard types of rooms. Most notably, sometimes those 3-bedroom grand villas are missing. Overall, Disney Vacation Club accommodations sleep anywhere from 2 to 12 guests. Disney Vacation Club does also provide official floor plans of all of the room types so you can browse them at your leisure. How does Disney Vacation Club work? The very basic overview is you buy a Disney Vacation Club contract. You are then allotted an amount of what they call vacation points once per year. You can then exchange those points for stays at these DVC accommodations. When you buy a contract, there are 3 main things you specify. These are your home resort, your use year, and the number of vacation points. A home resort is where your vacation points belong to. You are buying a teeny tiny slice of real estate. For example, I own something like 0.1% of 1 unit at Bay Lake Tower, next to the Contemporary Resort at Walt Disney World. You're able to book accommodations at your home resort 11 months in advance of your desired check-in. You'll hear this referred to as the home resort priority window or the 11-month booking window. Even though your contract specifies a home resort, for example, Bay Lake Tower for me, you can use your points at other resorts. There is an asterisk here, we will come back to that later. However, for all resorts that are not your home resort, you can't book that until 7 months until your desired check-in window. To reiterate, a home resort will be specified on your contract. That's something that you choose. You can then book a room at your home resort 11 months in advance, or you can choose to use your points elsewhere, but you won't be able to book until 7 months in advance. Each home resort does also have its own expiration year. This is not a timeshare in perpetuity. You do not own it forever. Your contract will expire. The earliest expirations right now are 2042, and the latest expirations are about 50 years off in the future. Depending on who you talk to, their philosophy about choosing a home resort will vary. In my opinion, that home resort booking window of 11 months in advance is a big advantage. Therefore, I generally tell people to choose the home resort where they want to stay the most. Another specification of the contract is your use year. This term is simply the month that your vacation points are allocated into your account every year. For example, I have an August use year. On August 1st of every year, my allotment of vacation points is loaded into my account for use. Your home resort is a big choice and matters a lot in my opinion. The use year maybe not so much. If you do tend to travel to the Disney parks around the same time every year, then there are use years that are more advantageous than others. This potential advantage is based on the cancellation policy and the cancellation window with respect to your trip timing and your designated use year. I have a video covering use year and this concept that I will link to in the description below if you want to further grasp this concept. The long story short is if you do tend to travel the same time every year, you probably want a use year within a few months prior to that time. If you travel sporadically though, your use year probably really doesn't matter that much. And the last big specification on your contract is the number of vacation points. Just like cash rates vary for hotels, the number of vacation points required to book a stay is going to depend on the room size, the time of year, and the resort that you're staying at. Disney Vacation Club publishes what they call points charts for every resort. Points charts detail the number of points you'd need to book a room for a night at all of the DVC resorts. This is broken out by room size, week nights versus weekend nights, and then time of year. For example, the current point chart specifies that it will cost you the fewest amount of points to travel during September and the most amount of points per night if you're going during holiday time, so peak winter break and peak spring break. The points charts will guide you to understand how many vacation points you'd need specified on your contract to have an ideal vacation. That being said, vacation points do come with some flexibilities that you may not be used to when thinking about timeshares. Because your contract simply specifies a number of vacation points and then you are the one exchanging those vacation points for stays, that means that unlike traditional timeshares, you're not locked into a specific unit or a specific week of the year. Also, your contract does specify the number of points you're getting per year, but you can combine points across years. For example, if you know you're not going on vacation this year, you can bank those points into the next year. Then next year you would have that year's points as well as the prior year's points to use. And if you want even more points, you can borrow points from the following year as well. Effectively, you can access up to 3 use years worth of points for one trip. Deciding the number of points on a DVC contract is a really important step, and ultimately you just need to consult the points charts. Ideally, you'll be basing your points needs based on past travel down to Disney World or Disneyland. If you know you typically only go for 3 nights a year, that's very different than if you go for 2 weeks a year, and that should inform your points decision. That being said, a lot of smaller travel parties, so single people or just couples, are only interested in staying in studios and therefore want a small Disney Vacation Club contract. I would caution you that you probably want at least 50 points to make it worth your while. Combining 50 points across 2 years is 100 points, or across 3 years is 150 points. This can get you a week-long stay. Much fewer points than a 50-point contract may make it difficult to make good use of your contract. Once you've decided on the aspects of your contract, then it's time to plan out for the cost. This is going to cost a lot. The cost of your contract absolutely does depend on the number of points specified in the contract and the home resort you're picking. There's also a third factor of if you're going to buy it directly through Disney or on the resale market, which we'll touch on in just a bit. There are 2 main items that make up the cost of a Disney Vacation Club contract. You have your initial purchase price to buy the contract, and then every year there are annual dues. For a 50-point contract, your initial purchase price is probably going to be at least $5,000 or so. That would be $100 per point for 50 points. But spending $10,000 or more is not uncommon for your initial purchase price. For example, if you're going to buy 150 points at a resort that costs $200 a point, that's going to be a hefty purchase. That initial purchase price you only pay once. But every subsequent year that you own that contract, you are responsible for paying annual dues. Think of these like homeowners association's fees. Each home resort has its own annual dues rate, and these do vary between home resorts. Annual dues are also assessed on a per point basis, so you're paying a dues amount per point on your contract. Therefore, if you have a 50-point contract, you are paying a much smaller amount in annual dues than if you have a 300-point contract. As I briefly mentioned, you can buy your contract directly through Disney or on the resale market. You are buying a timeshare. This is a real estate transaction. Just like any other real estate transaction, you don't necessarily have to buy directly from the developer then, you can buy from the previous owner. Typically, if you're going to buy a contract from the prior owner, this is done through a resale website. There are very reputable third-party sites that focus on Disney Vacation Club rentals and resales, so you can work with one of them. Those third-party websites act as the mediator between the current owner who is selling their contract and you, the person who wants to buy their contract. It is a real estate transaction again, so there is a lot of paperwork. Going through a third party, I think, is very beneficial. And like I said, there's a lot of trustworthy and reputable sites out there. If you're considering buying direct versus resale, it's worth noting that annual dues are the same no matter how you obtain your contract. Again, annual dues are based on the home resort specified on the contract. For example, I bought my Bay Lake Tower contract on the resale market, and I pay the same annual dues rate as someone who bought a Bay Lake Tower contract directly through Disney. Therefore, annual dues are not a factor to consider when comparing direct to resale purchase. The biggest factor is the initial purchase price. Your buy-in rate to obtain that contract directly through Disney is almost always going to be quite a lot higher than if you buy on the resale market. You can save a meaningful amount of money on that initial purchase price if you buy your DVC contract through the resale market. However, when you buy through the resale market, you are buying that contract exactly how it is. You cannot change the use year, you can't change the home resort, and you can't change the number of points. If you are instead buying directly through Disney, you can work with one of their salespeople to craft your ideal contract. There are some details and caveats here that we won't get into because they're really not that important, but ultimately, if you are working directly with Disney, you have a heavy hand in shaping your contract, especially in specifying the use year, number of points, and home resort. However, if you are working directly with Disney, there will be a minimum number of points for your purchase. This minimum number of points does change frequently. Ask your DVC salesperson what the current minimum is. Right now, as I'm recording this, it is 100 points. That means if you wanted a small contract, say 50 points, you could not do that directly through Disney. You would have to buy through the resale market instead. Getting back to that asterisk we talked about earlier, if you buy on the resale market, there are some restrictions. A big one is that you are not eligible for what they call membership extras. To be eligible for membership extras, you need to buy a minimum amount of points directly through Disney. Again, this number changes frequently. As I'm recording right now, it is 150 points. Membership extras are never guaranteed and they can change at any time. But here are some current examples of these perks. DVC members eligible for membership extras can buy the second highest tier annual pass at Walt Disney World. This is typically reserved for Florida residents only, so it does save you quite a lot of money compared to that highest tier pass that out-of-staters have to buy. There's usually small discounts on shopping and dining, anywhere between 10 and 20%. You become eligible for the DVC member cruise on Disney Cruise Line and also eligible for extra events like Moonlight Magic. You can access member-only lounges in the theme parks, and there's also Top of the World Lounge at Bay Lake Tower. And there are occasionally other perks. Recently, there was a discount on VIP tours on select dates. The past couple years, there's been a small Halloween event outside the park for members, and there's sometimes small discount on other hard ticket events like the Christmas party and Halloween party. So if you buy a resale contract, you are not eligible for any of those membership extras. These perks are nice, but in my opinion, they don't move the needle a ton. If you would save something like $8,000 on your initial purchase price by buying on the resale market instead of directly through Disney, these discounts and perks are nice, but probably not the most impactful. But there is, in my opinion, a more pressing resale restriction, and that is that your vacation points may be limited. If you buy a contract on the resale market with a home resort of anything older than Riviera, which is a vast majority of the resorts, then you can only use your vacation points at those resorts. Those vacation points are not valid to be used at Riviera Resort, Villas at Disneyland Hotel, or presumably any other newly built resorts in the future. As a very concrete example, my resale contract is at Bay Lake Tower. I can use those points to stay at Bay Lake Tower, my home resort, and most of the other resorts, so I can use them at the Polynesian, the Grand Floridian, Copper Creek, Old Key West, Saratoga Springs, Aulani, Vero Beach, etc., etc. I cannot use my Bay Lake Tower home resort vacation points at the Riviera Resort, I cannot use them at Villas at Disneyland Hotel, and any new builds I probably will not be able to use them at. Additionally, if you buy a resale contract for one of these newer built resorts, so Riviera Resort, Villas at Disneyland Hotel, or presumably anything new in the future, you can only use your vacation points at your home resort. For a concrete example, if I buy a Riviera contract on the resale market, I can only use those points at the Riviera Resort. I cannot use them anywhere else. If you love the Riviera, that won't matter at all, but it is just something to be aware of. Overall, Disney Vacation Club is Disney's timeshare program with villa accommodations. You buy a contract at a home resort that has a number of vacation points that will be allocated to you once yearly every use year. You then exchange those vacation points for stays at these villa accommodations. There's a large initial fee that you pay once to buy the contract, and then every year out that you own the contract, you will be responsible for annual dues. But like other pieces of real estate, you can sell off your contract if you want. Additionally, you can buy a contract from a seller, someone who currently owns that's trying to get rid of their contract, instead of buying directly through Disney. With that basic information in mind, why do people buy Disney Vacation Club? If when you're currently traveling to Disney resorts, you're consistently staying at deluxe level accommodations, then Disney Vacation Club actually can save you money in the long run. This is typically referred to as the break-even point for a contract. How many years would you have to use your allotment of vacation points on your DVC contract to have saved money compared to if you were just paying for hotels? DVC does act as a promise and sort of a guarantee to oneself of years of Disney trips to come. You're paying a large amount upfront as well as a smaller amount of yearly annual dues in order to have access to book Disney accommodations until that contract expires or you decide to get rid of it. And there is a psychological component for a lot of folks, including myself. My brain more willingly accepts paying a large amount of money now and a small amount every year for my Disney vacations for the next 30 plus years compared to paying $600 or something for one night every night that we want to go and stay at a deluxe resort. For my Bay Lake Tower contract, as an example, I paid under $14,000 for my initial purchase price, and then every year thus far in annual dues has been under $1,000. That is a lot of money, but I've been able to use those points to stay for over a week at Disney World. Compare that to the rack rate to stay at the Contemporary of typically over $600 a night. Those hotel rates would be over $3,000 just for one vacation. Instead, psychologically, I feel like I paid my large amount of slightly under $14,000, and now I'll get to use those points for the next 30 years or so. But Disney Vacation Club definitely is not for everyone. Here are some key questions you should ask yourself to determine if DVC may even make sense for you. Do you already travel to Disney frequently? This would be, in my opinion, at least once every other year for a longer trip, or more frequently if you're doing shorter trips. And when you go to Disney, are you already paying to stay at deluxe level resorts? If yes, then think about your ideal DVC contract in terms of the home resort and the number of points you would want. Look at the initial purchase price on the official DVC website and or resale websites. Would you be able to pay off that initial purchase pretty fast? If you'd be financing your DVC contract and paying it off slowly over years, honestly, the interest that you're accruing is probably wiping out any real savings you might have from buying DVC. If that's the case, you're probably better off just paying for hotels as you go. You could also rent Disney Vacation Club points instead of locking yourself into a contract that you own. But if you do have the disposable income to comfortably make this purchase, then you want to ask yourself if you envision continuing to go to Disney at this cadence for the next at least 7 to 10 years to come. It definitely is possible, but typically unlikely that you would reach your break-even point before about 7 years or so. If your goal is to make buying a Disney Vacation Club contract monetarily worth it, you should plan on hanging on to that contract for a while. That was a basic overview of the main Disney Vacation Club concepts and some prompts for you to consider if it makes sense for you to buy Disney Vacation Club or not. If you are leaning toward yes, please continue to do further research to better grasp all of the concepts. There are a lot more details about Disney Vacation Club that you should have a good understanding of before signing a contract. But if it's not for you, that's a great decision too. If you have questions, leave those in the comments down below. I hope you found this helpful. May the rest of your day be magical, and we'll see you real soon at Pixie Dust PhD.